Right. Hello and welcome to this little workshop on truth. This little workshop on how to investigate the phenomenon or the aspect that we may call truth. Welcome to this little workshop where we are going to see from where we are doing our research and what are the implications of the place from where we conduct our research. I mean, what is the relationship between the human program and truth? And how can we as human beings conduct investigations on God, consciousness, true self, false self, the architecture or the psychological self, all of this. I mean, how can we gain knowledge of the things that we actually cannot be 100% sure of? How can we come to conclusions and definitions? How can we come to clarity on the subjects, on the subject matters that we cannot truly actually define? Because, of course, we don't know. And we will find that out in this little workshop, why that is, and I will explain from which modalities that we explore, because the modality or the program or the platform from which we perform our investigation is of the utmost importance. If we cannot see the eye with which we see, then our research has no value. If we cannot see the instrument of measurement, then our measurement has no value. If we cannot see ourselves, it doesn't matter what we say about the world, because we as human beings, as a human program in action, we are constituted by hidden, unseen programs that dictate the way in which we perceive, in which we conceive, in which we measure and define and interpret. So before we start, we will define the two different platforms from where the human being can conduct research. The first platform is the so-called scientific platform, the platform of cognition, the cognitive platform, the platform that is based upon thinking. And that platform is, in my opinion, a platform that is produced by hidden, unseen algorithms. And this is the point for science, because science don't see this. Scientists, even neuroscientists who do serious research on cognition, usually they don't see that there must be hidden, unseen algorithms that produce our thinking. And the hidden, unseen algorithms that produce our thinking and our interpretations and the way that we make conceptions based on our perceptions, these hidden algorithms are simply the same thing as the structure that constitutes the human program. And the human program is the way that the brain works. The human program is the brain that the mind and the brain works. And the algorithms that control and decide what we experience in our life is the algorithms that has created the human brain and that controls the way in which we perceive and conceive and the way in which we make interpretations. Interpretation is hugely important when it comes to do scientific research, because if you don't see, if you don't understand the way that you interpret, if you don't understand interpretation, then you don't understand anything that has anything to do with scientific research. And this is so dominant in academia. There are so many professors and teachers who absolutely have no idea about the hidden, unseen algorithms that produce the systems from which they interpret. I mean, they cannot see that language in itself is such an algorithm. They cannot see that thought itself, the way that we believe in the validity of the structure of thought, is actually also a representation for a hidden algorithm. I mean, something that we cannot see. I mean, there's something in our brain, there's something in our mind-brain system that controls the way in which we make interpretations, the way in which we perceive, the way in which we make conceptions. And if we cannot see that, then we are blind, and it doesn't really matter what science or scientists deliver, because that knowledge is going to be too limited. Simply because if you cannot see the algorithm from which you see, if you cannot understand that there are unseen algorithms behind the eye from which you perceive and see and conceive, then you haven't understood the human program. And if you haven't understood the human program, then you're obviously some kind of a child in a kindergarten, and so many professors and teachers and scientists today, to me, I have to say that they are like children. I mean, they have no true grown-up, mature understanding of what it means to perceive from within the human program. I mean, they cannot see the machine, the engine, the factory of the not only of the brain, but of the perceptual system. In science, we all know that when we measure something, the thing that we measure will change. It will change its nature. The natural characteristics of the object that we observe and measure will change simply because we measure it. Which means that the instrument from where we measure, the instrument from where we see, which means the human program. It doesn't mean the microscope. It doesn't mean the instrument in the laboratory. It means the instrument inside our own skull. It means the instrument hidden in our brains. It means the instrument that we cannot see. It means the human program. This is what decides what we see, and decides what options we have when it comes to interpretation and analysis. So the first platform from which we conduct investigations are the platform of cognition, the platform of cognitive thinking, of analysis. And analysis is a language game based on the algorithms that constitutes the human program. And of course, specifically the ones that has to do with thought and language, and also with those who make us believe in the validity of thought and language, because we don't question the validity of thought and language when we do our research, which means that we are already far away from truth when we think that we are close to truth, because of the illusion that we live in a way. And the illusion that we live in is constituted by the way the human program works. And this is the most important thing that we have to understand when it comes to science, research, philosophy, understanding of the human program. If we don't understand the human program before we want to say something about the world, then we are like children. Then we are amateurs. Then we're not professionals. In order to become professionals and mature, we have to understand the human program before we say something about the world. Because we say something about the world according to the algorithms that exists as unseen structures invisible structures, subtle invisible structures within the program that decides the way that we think and the way that we see, perceive, conceive, and interpret. Now, so this is the first step of understanding when it comes to doing this kind of research. The second thing is to understand the second platform, because the second platform is the platform that science do not include. There have been some scientists in the last century that has included this second platform, and those are, in a certain sense, David Bohm, and you could also say Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton in the modern day world. The second platform is the platform of the inner experiential domain. The first platform that we already have described is the platform of cognitive thinking. It's the platform of cognition, which is the only platform that is used in academic practice, in academic research, and in scientific work mostly. And to me this is sad, because the first platform, the platform of cognitive thinking, will always be controlled by language games and hidden, unseen algorithms that produces the results that we reach. The result that we reach is a result that is based on the way that we measure, and the way that we measure controls the result in a way. I mean, as we have said before, the way that we measure changes the nature of what we measure, and the hidden, unseen algorithms of cognitive thinking when it comes to language, belief in the validity of thought and language in itself. All of these things are highly problematic. So, platform number 2, the platform of inner experiential domains. The domain of inner experience, which basically means to see with the body, or to see with the energy in itself, or to see with the true self, or to see with the eye of the soul, or to acknowledge the fact that we are extrasensory. I mean, that we sense and see with our hearts, with our brains too, in a way that is not based on cognition. I mean, we have knowledge and we have access to knowledge. We have access, not only access to experience, but we live inside an experience that we do not have a language for. We have not yet given names to what we perceive in the inner experiential domain. Some people say that in the inner experiential domain, I perceive and I experience God. And what is God? Well, God is the absence of cognition, in a way. God is the absence of the tyranny of thinking. God is the absence of our addiction to cognition. God is the absence of our addiction. God is the absence of our mental addictions and hang-ups to cognitive phenomenon, to cognitive thinking. So platform number 2, which we gain access to through meditation and through introspection, is to me a hugely important platform that is not included in science. And David Bohm, and of course Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton, are also people who see that this has to change. And in Asia, I mean, Japanese Zen and all. There's a lot of high level professors of research into the area that we call Zen, for example, that very clearly see that we know everything from the cognitive perspective, but we have no knowledge about man. What is man? What is it that the human being is? You know, and there are many gurus in India who says that, well, the human being is the true self, or we are the true self. The true self is the selfless self. The true self in the human being is the selfless self, the thing in us that is not connected to cognitive behavior, that is not connected to cognition. When we see with our soul, when we see with the energy field inside us, when we perceive inner experiential realities with the inner eye of the body in itself, or of the soul, heart, being, you know, all of these things are not things that we should exclude from science, because this is really experiential knowledge. And a lot of gurus say that no knowledge is the only form of true knowledge. I mean, the void, the true self, ultimate reality, which is the same substance as true self, in a way, is an experiential reality that, although maybe it is produced by the brain, it is still an important experiential fact. And we haven't got names. We have not developed a perceivable architecture for the inner realms of man. We have not developed an alphabet, so to speak. We have not developed a proper system or architecture for the different parts of the human being, like the false self, which is the domain of the psychological self, you could say, in a spiritual perspective. True self, God, soul, heart, the selfless self, the eternal presence of the voidness. I mean, all these things that actually has huge importance for the science of man. We have to put inner experience into the science of man. And this has not been done adequately before. So in my mind, we have to do that and acknowledge the fact that there are two platforms from which we exist. We exist from the inner experiential realm, where we have access to our own experience of God, true self, soul, heart, pure energy, Buddha nature, and so forth. And there is the realm of cognitive thinking. And we are oscillating, we are moving like a pendulum between these two realms, between these two domains. You know, we go from our inner reality to cognitive thinking. You know, this is in a way the natural movement within man. We move between, we exist in the polarity, we move between inner experiential self-awareness and inner experiential knowledge and psychological cognitive thinking. So we have to include both platforms. And we must understand that even the second platform can be produced by the algorithm that produces the human brain, because our experience of the inner experiential reality might be just an aspect of the brain. When the neurocircuitry, when we activate a certain neurocircuitry in the brain, we will have this experience. But that means that it is highly relevant to the science of man. And the science of man is what is of utmost importance, because without the science of man, we cannot understand the world in a proper sense, because we know, as I said before, that the thing that we measure will be controlled and influenced by the very act of measurement, because we measure from something. Not only the microscope, but we use our own brains, which means that we are conducting our research from a set of unseen, invisible algorithms that we are not aware of when we measure, interpret, and analyze. So this is the veil of human consciousness, the veil, the curtain that we can remove through the inner true self I, in a sense. I mean, the I of the self, the I of Parabrahman, we could say, if we to talk with some of the finest Indian gurus, the eyes of Parabrahman is the eye of the Buddha, you could say, or it is the eye of the soul, or the eye of the self, you know. When we say the eye of the mind, it's a different thing. You can feel that it moves up. Awareness takes the elevator up to the brain, up to the head. But the eye of the self is further down to the heart. The eye of the self is, and the eye of Parabrahman is the eye of your whole being, you know. You can sense it and see it with your whole being. All of these things are important when it comes to the science of man. So my conclusion, my work in this little workshop is to make this introduction and say that in our research, in our activity where we try to find truth and come closer to truth, where we try to come closer to original, authentic aspects of reality, then we have to accept both platforms. It's not enough to accept only the cognitive thinking, the analytical platform, because that is based on language games and algorithms. And it is not enough to believe in the validity of the results that we produce, because the results that we produce are made from a human program, and the human program is built on hidden, unseen, invisible algorithms that influence our conclusions, that influence our conceptions, perceptions, and the way that we think and conduct any intellectual business whatsoever. And of course, that also influences the way that we perceive and experience our inner experiential domains as well. The way that we experience God is also a result of the way that the human program delivers such an experience. I mean, I experience God. Why do I experience God in the way that I do? Well, because the human program makes it possible for me to have this experience that I can experience as true self, or soul, or God, or Buddha nature, or Parabrahman, or whatever name that we want to give it. So this talk, this introduction, is simply to make it clear that we need both platforms, and perhaps it's a good idea to know the distinction between the two platforms. They can come together in union, or they can be more separated. There are many options, and I hope that many of you, many people will contribute to the reflection that will serve the science of man, because that's what we're here for. We are here to serve the science of man. Thank you.